Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for Mac Voices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's not often that I get to welcome someone who has a brand new podcast out of the gate, and this time it's one that we told you a little bit about before, but now it's out and live. As we record this, I think it's in its 4th edition, and it is by Mr. Jeff Butts of the Mac Observer. Jeff, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks. Awesome to be back.
Hi, I'm delighted to have you back for this. I think this will be the 3rd time, I believe.
No, this is, actually it is the 3rd time.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yep.
And we've been talking about this since I think you hinted at it the very first time you were here, and now it's out there fully blown. It's called Terminal Tinkering.
Yep.
It's a podcast by the Mac Observer, and it's all you.
It is. It's all me, and it's all having fun, doing what I love to do. Taking things and seeing what I can do with them and just tinkering around.
Well, now what I'm afraid of is that when we say terminal tinkering, they're going to think that the show is only going to be you talking about code or things like that. And I should clarify very quickly that this is a video podcast, something new for TMO.
Yep.
So, but when I watched the first few episodes, I was pleased to see that you do some production on it. I mean, sometimes I'm looking at your screen, sometimes I'm looking at you, sometimes I'm looking at other things. And so I'm intrigued to hear about how you're approaching this, especially with the baseline topic of terminal tinkering.
Yeah, I mean, the idea, terminal tinkering is a play on words. There's definitely some terminal stuff involved, but it's really me seeing how far I can take my tinkering. What is the terminal point of my tinkering? So I play around with doing stuff with code. I play around with seeing what I can do with older Macs, like that Power Mac G5 that I picked up at MacStock this year. I play around with my Hackintosh and show things with that. And I even get into stuff that has nothing at all to do with Macs, but it has everything to do with electronics and seeing how far we can stretch our imaginations.
And when you started to do the garage door tinkering, that's when I knew this was going to be something special.
Yeah, that was, it's funny how that came to be. Our garage door went out about a month ago. And a month prior, I'd gotten an email about this Skylink Adams garage door opener saying, hey, do you want to take a look at it? And I passed on it because, if your garage door opener is working, you just leave it alone. But as soon as it died and we realized there was no resurrecting it, we were talking about going down to Home Depot and getting the parts to turn it into a manual garage door. And I remembered that I still had this email. So I fired off a message to my PR contact and said, hey, I'd actually love to give this a try. And he sent it out to me, and my roommate and his brother and I, in the course of 2 nights, got the thing installed and working, and it's been phenomenal.
I would imagine they had to be delighted with this because a garage door opener, I mean, we've seen a couple announcements out there, but it's not the kind of thing that you can just go out and okay, I'm going to put this on and try it and then take it back off. It's something that you're probably going to want to leave intact if it works.
Yeah. And so far it's been working fine. It's the best of both worlds. One of my roommates is 85 years old. He doesn't understand smart technology. He's got an Android phone that I've shown him how to do things 100 times, but that's okay.
Sure.
But it works in both worlds. It's got a regular remote control. It's got a button on the wall, and all he has to do is push the button, and it works. And I get a notification every time the garage door opens or closes.
So what do you plan to do? Are you going to hack it anymore, or is it just going to pretty much stay as is?
No, I plan on playing around with. It has integration with if this then that, and I plan on playing with that. See what it can do with if this then that. Plug it into my home automation software on my Mac. Plug it into Alexa. Don't even start.
Yeah.
Dang it. Yeah, it's something for me to keep tinkering with.
I like the whole spirit of this. That that it is the tinkering thing. It's where a lot of us got our starts, and a lot of us still enjoy messing around with things when we have the time.
Yep.
And you're obviously making the time because it's part of your job, which I'm a little bit envious of.
I know. I'm blessed.
You are. So I want to switch over just for a second to the actual production of the show.
Sure.
Because we like to cover some video production topics here on Mac Voices, and I'm curious as to how you're going about creating this.
Probably in all of the wrong ways because I've never done this before.
That's the best way to learn.
Yeah. I'm using Screenflow 7. So I've got a Logitech HD 615, I think, webcam that I use that to record the intro and outro segments when I remember. My Arduino thermometer episode, I filmed part of that with my iPhone on a tripod and spliced it into Screenflow. Forgot to do the webcam intro and outro, so just flew with it the way it was. The basic format that I'm trying to go for is that I give it a personal touch when I open up with my ugly mug, just to introduce the podcast and what we're going to talk about. And then I go to whatever screen I'm working on. And if that means I set up my iPhone to record my monitor to show someone what's happening in open firmware on the Power Mac G5, that's what I do. Otherwise, I use Screenflow to record my desktop, or I use Reflector 2 to record my iOS screen.
You use Reflector to record your iOS screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Screenflow will do it, but I've had bad experiences with Screenflow trying to record my iOS screen. Up until the most recent point update, if I would record anything in Screenflow from my iPhone screen, a 20-second video would become 19 hours of slow motion nothing.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. And I don't think it's a Hackintosh problem because Jeff Gamet ran into the same thing. And the most recent point update fixed it. But I'm still in that mode. You know, my morning job, I do a lot of screen recording using Reflector 2. So I'm used to it. I know how it works. I can record a frame around it so I can make it look pretty on the video. And that's what I do.
You may have just answered the question because I'm not familiar with Reflector with those capabilities. Is that the reason you chose that over just doing a QuickTime capture?
Yeah, that's exactly why. That and the fact that QuickTime tends to be flaky. It'll work half the time and not work the other half the time. I've run into that on my Mac and on my Hackintosh. So
that's interesting because I've had really great luck with QuickTime, and I'm a little surprised. You know, I mean, bugs creep in, but the Screenflow folks are also very, very good. So I'm glad to hear they got it fixed that quickly for you.
Yeah, they got it fixed. And you know, the problem on the Mac might have been the fact that it's a mid 2010 Mac Mini, but I'm too stubborn to retire something.
Well, that's you know. I realize what I'm about to say, but that's only 7 years. So,
yeah.
You know, that's, I mean, you can't expect necessarily everything to run exactly the way it should.
No.
So,
and remember my background. I come from a Windows background. 7 years is an eternity for a Windows computer.
Oh, yeah, that's
for
true.
Mac, it's barely touching the surface of the lifespan.
Yeah. What system is on that Mini? Do you remember?
Right now, it is It's either the GM candidate of High Sierra or the previous beta of High Sierra.
Okay. You can run something that old on High Sierra? Okay.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we've seen a lot of reports of 2011 MacBook Airs becoming remarkably faster with High Sierra. Now, my next project, if I can locate a Sierra installer, since Apple has been so kind as to remove them from the App Store, my next project, I'm going to put Sierra back on the Mac Mini, run Geekbench on it to get some benchmarks, then install High Sierra and run the benchmarks again and see what changes.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that we're talking about here with terminal tinkering, just messing around, seeing what it does. I mean, that kind of thing can take a little bit of time to go back and forth between systems.
Yep.
But, at the end of the day, you get some if maybe it's valuable, maybe it's not, but at least it's interesting.
Right. It's purely for science. It'll kill if it works out the way we think it will, it'll kill two birds with one stone. I'll talk about it on Terminal Tinkering, but I'll also write about it on Mac Observer.
Right. Jeff, this is a rare treat for me to get someone kind of that's right out of the chute doing their very first podcast. So aside from the fact that it's work and, it's part of your job, why did you want to get into podcasting? And certainly, why did you want to undertake video right out of the gate?
Well, it's actually not my first podcast.
Oh, it's not?
No, it's not. When I was in grad school, my wife and I were both English majors in grad school, both working on our masters in English. And for one of our courses, I believe it was a linguistics course, rather than writing a weekly journal, we did a weekly podcast called Semantic Violation, where we took the research papers that we were studying in this linguistics class and discussed them on the podcast. So I've got some audio production experience already. And when I first started talking about launching my own podcast, I was thinking about doing something related to education and how technology was influencing education. But then I got to thinking about how much fun I have playing with the Hackintosh project. I got an Arduino kit from SparkFun that I could play around with. I've got two older Macs that I can hack at and see what I can make them do. And so I talked to Dave Hamilton and I talked to Brian Chaffin and Jeff Gamet and said, guys, I think I want to do a geek podcast, something that's along the lines of Mac Geek Gab, but the kind of stuff that Mac Geek Gab doesn't really talk about. The under the hood stuff, digging into the terminal, digging into older Macs and giving them new life, digging into electronics and seeing what we can do with them. And I mean, part of it stemmed from, we were talking on Slack several months ago about an Arduino kit or an Arduino build that had just come out. And I mentioned that I got a review copy of a book called the Arduino Inventor's Cookbook. And Brian Chaffin said, dude, I would love some Arduino content. And I said, okay, I'll give it to you in spades. I'll put a third of my podcast around it.
And for the folks who may not have been here for your earlier conversations, explain what an Arduino is.
An Arduino is it's a microcontroller board. It's a programmable logic board that has its own microprocessor. Sometimes it's even Intel-based processor. I've got one that's Intel. And then it has digital and analog inputs and outputs. So you can plug sensors into it. And in episode 2 of Terminal Tinkering, that whole episode is about building an Arduino thermometer that originally was just a thermometer. It would report the temperature over Bluetooth low energy to my iPhone, so I could check what the temperature was anywhere within Bluetooth LE range of my phone and just see what it was. Now the thing has actually become a temperature and humidity sensor And eventually I'm going to build a full-blown weather station to put in my backyard based around Arduino.
And this will all probably be documented on Terminal Tinkering.
Oh, absolutely.
I just get this funny feeling that there's this like mad scientist in the background kind of rubbing his hands saying, "Oh, I can't wait." Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I use my powers for good, not evil.
Ah, good. Well, that makes me feel a lot better.
Until the voices take over.
You have those too, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're Mac voices.
They are Mac voices.
Yeah. Sorry, couldn't help it.
Except for the FreeBSD devil, and he just makes me mad.
Yeah. Jeff, how long does it take you to put together a show? And I realize that, like Mac Voices, that can vary. But what would you say a typical time is?
Considering I don't usually write a script, and I end up making a lot of mistakes. A 20-minute show takes me anywhere from an hour to 3 hours to put together. And, that part of that is exporting it from Screenflow. Even though Valtour, the Mac Observer Hackintosh, is super powerful, that 20-minute show still takes about 10 to 15 minutes to export. And then I have to upload it to the server. And so all of that's rolled into it. But usually no more than 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. That sounds about right. And the funny thing is that a lot of folks don't realize that, okay, once the show is in its final form, that exporting takes time. And because you're compressing it to something that you can distribute, and then you have to upload it. And depending on what you're up to, everybody has great download speeds these days. Well, most people have great download speeds, but upstream, not so much.
Yeah, I've got a pretty decent upstream considering I'm in the Rust Belt of Ohio. My upstream is about 10 megabits per second, which is pretty respectable. But it still takes a fair bit of time, and editing takes forever.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what works best, I found, is that if I just don't stop recording unless I'm at the very beginning of a recording. If I'm in the middle, I just build myself in an edit point and then go back and find it later.
Yeah, that's exactly my workflow, especially when I'm doing like a briefing show where it's just me. I just try to keep on going, and then cut it later, add transitions in or cover up the transitions with graphics if necessary. But yeah, it's you learn a lot, and I think it's one of the great things. It sounds like you're already getting into it a little bit, that you develop your own personal shortcuts, but you also come to appreciate the craft of editing.
Yeah. And fortunately, I already had experience with Screenflow from my education days. I used Screenflow pretty heavily when I was teaching online courses, and even when I was building tutorial videos for the faculty members to show them how to use Blackboard or something like that, I used Screenflow. And so, back then it was Screenflow 5. Things have changed a little bit between that now and then, but it's still basically the same app. So I'm pretty familiar with it and know how to use it.
It's interesting that you bring up Screenflow. I was having a conversation on Twitter with a listener, viewer, about video editing, and he was trying to work Screenflow, and it's like, it's great for screencasting. I've only tried it a little bit as a video editor, although I know several people that use it as a video editor. But for whatever reason, I decided to go the Final Cut Pro route, just because I felt like there was a lot more information out there about it. And it seems to make sense. But if it's not the right tool for you, it's not the right tool for you.
I don't need it. I have it. And I might have used it with episode 4 because I got all the way through the episode, got everything recorded, and I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, what is that sound? Oh my, that's loud. Oh my goodness, I've got the windows open and the crickets are chirping. And so I ran, Screenflow has a tool to remove background noise, and that removed it, except whenever I was talking. And so when I was talking, you'd have the lilting of crickets along with my speech. So I ran it through a filter in Final Cut Pro. I still couldn't get it all out, but hopefully people don't hear it unless they're listening for it. I hear it because I know it's there.
And doesn't it drive you crazy once you've heard something like that, or you see an error or whatever?
Yeah.
And odds are that most of your viewers, if any, will ever see it or hear it, but you know
Right.
it's there and it drives you crazy.
I knew it was there, and because of that lesson, before, as I was getting ready for this show, even though it's been up to 75, almost 80 degrees today, and we haven't run the air conditioner, I closed my windows.
Yep. Understood. And yet, I think anybody that listens to your show or mine understand that while we would love to have a soundproof studio, it's not realistic. So
Right.
every so often, some extraneous noise comes in, whether it's a siren going down the street or whether it's the lawnmower
Yep.
outside or something, it happens. But, it's,
Yeah. Luckily, I live in a small town, and there's not too many sirens that go by. I tend to have a pretty quiet environment. The only thing I have to worry about is one of my roommates not noticing the sign on my door that says "Don't disturb." But my real next Arduino project is going to fix that. I'm going to build my own smart controlled on-air sign.
Okay, I'm looking forward to that one.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, again, I know you're early into this, and we've talked about your Hackintosh projects before, but what do you have planned for terminal tinkering? Is it going to be stuff that I hesitate to say the rest of us can afford, but is it that kind of thing, or is it going to be a little more high-powered?
It's going to be a mix of everything. I try to do, when I can, I try to do 3 different segments at a time. Now the Arduino thermometer, that took a while, but even that, that's something that anybody can afford. As far as building it, now creating the app to go along with it, that might be a little more difficult because of the Apple ecosystem, but the parts for it might cost someone $50, $55 total. Coming up, I'll be talking about how to set up third-party drivers on a Hackintosh. I'll be looking at how to install unsigned apps on a Mac and what you need to watch out for since the Mac keychain stealer has come to light. I'll go back to my old Power Mac G5 and get a graphical desktop installed on it and show how to do that. So, a mix of older Mac stuff, more Arduino stuff. I want to get into Raspberry Pi. I really want to get that Commodore 64 Mini that just got announced today. And yeah, that's going to be fun. There's a lot that I want to do, and I've got it mapped out, but I find that, episode 4 was supposed to be vastly different than what it turned out to be. And I got to talking to Jeff Gamet about the garage door opener, and he thought it was such a great idea that I just said, you know what, I got to throw this into the episode. And so I can't remember what I was going to do instead. I think I was going to do resizing APFS partitions on High Sierra. So I ditched that because I've really already done it for Mac Observer. And I just went with the garage door opener, which honestly, garage door openers tend to run about $200 to $300. And this Skylinks garage door opener that I have retails for $299. Mm. So anybody who's looking to put a garage door opener in their house, if they've already budgeted for it, they can afford this thing. And now they know about it and they know to look for it.
Right. And it's been tested by someone that has some credibility, some serious tech credibility. And that's, it's one thing to read the marketing speak. And I mean this for any piece of hardware or software, it's not, I'm not picking on them, but they all make themselves sound like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think that's something that we all can bring to the table is,
Oh, yeah.
okay, this is something I've really tried, that I really use, or it's in my home, or I really have, I always kind of laugh at the people that write reviews based on 2 or 3 hours of experience with something. And it's like, no, my reviews aren't going to come out the next day or the next week. I want to use stuff and find out, where it falls down.
Yeah, it drives PR people crazy because they want you to review it like 3 or 4 days after you receive it.
Yeah.
But, the folks that are behind Skylink, they don't pester me. They know that I'm giving it thorough testing. And when I do my full review on Mac Observer, I'm even going to talk about the installation process because it's not perfect. The instructions don't get it right everywhere. There's some things that I'm learning how this works just by observing it and testing it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Again, you bring that up because just tonight at dinner, I was contemplating a particular piece of software that shall go unnamed, because I got an update to it and release notes for it, and it's a fairly sophisticated piece of software, or can be. And I thought, okay, this is great. It can do this stuff, but you don't tell me exactly how. And I admit, in a normal announcement, they shouldn't. But I went looking for some instructions on the website and couldn't find any. And I downloaded the updater, and same thing, not there. And I really think that these folks are doing a disservice not only to the customers, but to themselves. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I could go and see, okay, exactly, and I understand if there are 500 features, well, you could spend all your time documenting those 500 features. But there's some that if it's less than obvious, if it takes more than 3 steps, I think we could use, at the very least, a walkthrough with some screenshots.
Yep. And honestly, this is where some of the newer ARKit apps for iOS 11 are falling down, is they're not giving you that walkthrough. They're not giving you that example. And, my work over at App Advice, I won't write about an article that I won't write about an app that I can't figure out. So if they don't give me a walkthrough, unless it's simple enough for me to figure out, I won't write about it. And even if it's simple for me to figure it out, one of the first things I do is show people, okay, this is what you need to know about how to use it. Because if I decide it's worth my time to write about it, I want people to use it. So they need to know how to use it.
Yeah, agreed. Hopefully some of this can be addressed in terminal tinkering. That you can take some things that maybe aren't documented quite as well as they could be, and help people through them because they are good products.
I really need a videographer to come over here and just follow me around the house as I use this one amazing app and do a complete schematic of my whole house. And supposedly I can do this in about 8 minutes with this app.
Schematic of your house.
Floor plan, blueprint, ARKit.
An ARKit app that can do a floor plan of your house. Okay.
Yes. All rooms. You can tell it where the walls are, where the doors are, where openings are, where windows are. If you can't get to the corner to scan it with your camera, you can hold the phone up to the wall and go around the room one wall at a time, and it generates dimensions that are accurate within 10 centimeters. And if you pair it with a Bluetooth-enabled laser level, it's accurate within a centimeter.
Okay, I want to see this episode quick. So,
yeah, I got to find somebody who is on my level and can video me doing it, and none of my roommates are really there.
That's really interesting. Okay, yeah, well, folks, now we have something to look forward to. That's very cool. That's very cool. So right now, it's obviously available on the Mac Observer site.
Right.
Is it in iTunes yet?
Absolutely.
Audio and video?
In video.
In video,
Yep.
Great.
It's also on YouTube, on Mac Observer's channel on YouTube. Eventually, we'll be moving it to its own sub-channel, but for right now, it's on Mac Observer's YouTube channel.
Great. Are you publishing an audio only, Jeff?
There's an audio only track available from each episode's webpage just by pure accident, because that's how our WordPress plugin works. But no, simply because the experience wouldn't be that good.
Okay.
I mean, I could easily do it, but the experience wouldn't be what I really want my audience to go for. Which that's unfortunate because, you know, the third-party podcast apps, most of them don't support video, but it is what it is.
Well, I respect that. It's one of the, I know it's a challenge that I've faced in the past, because anybody that does video will tell you, and it does seem to be a universal truth, that your video podcast account for about 25% of your traffic. You know? But if it's only a video podcast, if it's only video and it really wouldn't benefit from audio, you're probably not losing anything.
Not much. I mean, I do narrate what I'm typing as I type it, but I'm sure there's things that I leave out. And, you know, it's better just to watch the video, folks.
Yeah.
Take 20 minutes. You'll spend more time than that watching a television show, and I don't give you commercials yet.
Yet.
Yeah. Seeking sponsors, don't have any yet.
Yeah, and you know, I would put in a little bit of a plug here for, as much as I respect some of the podcatchers out there, if it doesn't support video, you know, I really think folks, you ought to check out at least an alternative for the video podcast you do want to subscribe to, because I think their audio is terrific. I'm the first one to tell you, I listen to an awful lot of audio podcasts, and some that have video components, but usually I download them both. I can listen to I can listen to audio in the car, and if I hear something interesting, okay, I'll go back and watch the video. Mm-hmm. But you know, there's something to be said for that, and there's a great big wide world of video out there.
Yep, so absolutely.
So, do you have it? Does Terminal Tinkering have its own URL at this point?
No, it does not.
Okay,
we're just on Mac Observer. I try to release episodes every Thursday at approximately 8:30 in the morning. So if you're looking for it on TMO's website, look for it at or after 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Otherwise, your podcast app will notify you when it's available on iTunes, and you know it's there every Thursday.
Great. Well, please, folks, check it out. I think you're gonna find it interesting at the very least, because I was going through the first few episodes and it's like, wow, I didn't know that, and you know, you get to see some live work in the terminal. And I'm sorry for those audio podcasters, but if you're trying to talk too much terminal without the video, you know, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it just doesn't translate well.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell me about individual commands, but there's nothing quite like seeing it typed in and then seeing what happens next.
Right.
So
yeah.
Jeff, obviously, Terminal Tinkering. Oh, I should have asked, does it have any social media presences at this point, or is it just you?
It's just me.
Okay.
TMO puts it out over the Mac Observer Facebook page and Twitter. That's something I need to talk to Dave Hamilton about and see if he wants me to initiate that, is its own Twitter handle, its own Facebook page. Right now, I tell people if they want to reach out to me with feedback or suggestions, email me at jeffb@macobserver.com or hit me on Twitter as @Clefmeister.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what I want to make sure folks knew how to get a hold of you. But yeah, this is all part of it. You know, as you're developing that presence with a new show, trying to decide where you're going to be, what you're going to be.
Yep,
that can be a job in itself.
Yeah, it can, but it's. I tell everybody, Terminal Tinkering is my baby, and it is. I put a lot of thought into it. I planned it. Well, I planned it from mid-July until we launched not last week, but the week before. So I put a lot of time and effort into getting the first 3 episodes ready, and now I do an episode every week.
Great. Well, congratulations, and thank you for sharing some of the background with us. I was anxious to talk to you about it when I saw the notice come out, and then our schedules just couldn't connect. So I guess as we record this, there are 4 episodes out, number 5 coming shortly.
Number 5 will be out on Thursday.
Great. Jeff, you're always welcome. Thank you so much. We'll get you back and talk a little bit more about what's happening in terminal tinkering as you go along and see how it develops.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. Please go check out Terminal Tinkering. Even if you are not really into the terminal part of it, I think you're going to find some interesting things there. And it sounds like Jeff has a lot of interesting things coming up, and I know I'm going to be watching, and I hope you are too. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.